Welcome to the Pharmacy Residency Podcast, a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network. Today I'm going to go over the supplemental essays, which are, I know you've got your letters of intent written, and if you need help, of course, you can go to my residency.teachable.com/p/extreme LOI course to learn more about how to do that. And then certainly you can also get my one-on-one help. And then with these, I just treat these as if they were a letter of intent. So for every 2 essays you need help with, that would just be the same charge as 2 letters of intent. Because these are really, really hard. And the first thing that I hate to say people mess up is they answer the wrong type of question. So I picked UNC only because, well, 500 people applied there last year, I heard. I don't know. But also, they've done something which is to put 2 questions that may look like they're the same just because they're in the same font and same type and all that stuff, but are completely different questions and require completely different answers and skill sets. And I'm going to go over some of the ways that you can avoid messing up. So this is a video presentation. And so if you're just kind of listening on the podcast, you can go to YouTube at my Tony PharmD channel. You can see the video and check it out. Or I think you can see the video if you're on like one of the like Apple Podcasts or whatever it is. So, but anyway, this is a video I'm doing to make clear exactly how you should do this. And then I'm also going to talk about formatting, because your letter of intent and your format of your essay is probably going to be different. There's an expectation that they are different, but of course nowhere in there do they mention that. So it's kind of like that British baking show where they challenge you to make something, but they don't tell you how much of things that you should use, just that, flour, eggs, and water, and you're supposed to make this like 3-tier cake or something. So the same thing is here. They give you not all the information that you would really like to have. Like, do you want me to put it on this paper that you're saying? Because the UNC one has this huge header, has these huge questions which take up almost 1/3 of the page. So do they want you to put it all on that page? Do they want you to put it on a separate page? Do they want you to put each question on one page with that letterhead? I don't know. But what I can tell you is how to answer the questions. And I can show you how most people would take double spacing. And that means something different. In a letter of intent, double spacing means double space between the paragraphs and not in the header where you're putting their address, and not at the bottom where you're putting your complimentary close and all of that stuff. But with an essay, traditionally, and the reason you do this is a little bit different now, but traditionally with an essay, you would double space the entire thing because that essay is going to be graded. The professor is going to put comments, and they need the space to put the comments and to put the carets and things that say caret, like the little thing that's on top of your 6 on your keyboard, not like the Bugs Bunny carrot, but those types of things, and critical editing marks. And if there's no double spacing, there's no room to put the marks. So I'll show you what that really probably should look like. That's going to make it look like an essay, feel like an essay, and all of that. All right, well, let's start with the first question, which is describe an intervention, change, or contribution that made an impact on patient care and or a pharmacy practice, and what you learned from the experience. This type of answer should evoke emotion. It's a hero's journey. You are the hero, and you are creating that intervention, change, or contribution. So now is not the time to put in those types of things where you might have helped someone with their, pill box and making sure that they were compliant. Okay, this is the time where you're maybe dealing with someone who is very young and dealing with a just devastating condition. Like juvenile rheumatoid arthritis comes to mind, cancers come to mind, those types of things. And what you're doing is setting the stage for the pathos, the emotion that's going to go along with it. So when you're describing the situation, the first thing you want to do is get away from forensic and start just really setting the scene. Bring the person in, get the setting in there. And so many people just never just tell the story. What you want to do is start describing the story. And I think a story that would probably do something like this for me would be when I had to, and I don't know if I'll make it through this without being emotional about it, but when my daughter was, we'd just gotten her home from the NICU, and the alarm went off. So they have those alarms on their bed. And, we would just like literally run out of bed anytime we heard one of those alarms because it meant that they might not be breathing. So I'm watching Iowa State and Texas Tech, and obviously you may or may not need to put that on there, but I'm watching Iowa State and Texas Tech, and, we're both on the ground. She's on the ground kind of lying on one of these little mats, and I'm right next to her, and, watching the game, trying to have some kind of a life as I'm, working with basically, this small infant. And all of a sudden the alarm goes off, and I'm like, nobody's in the beds. Why is the alarm going off? And it was that she wasn't breathing. And all of a sudden she starts to turn purple. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I had to start CPR on my daughter, who was just born. And it was brutal, absolutely brutal. And what happened was she had pyloric valve stenosis, which is a narrowing of the pyloric valve. And what we had done was we were feeding her, and she had thrown up a bit in the hospital. But in the hospital, she has all of those, alarms, and they had a nurse per child, like 24/7. Like I think it was like $7,500 a day just to have them in the hospital, in their giraffes and in their, triplet NICU suite. And, there's no one there. I'm absolutely screaming for my wife. And she's in the other room brushing her teeth with an electric toothbrush, and she can't hear me. So I had to remember to do the compressions. And with an infant, you just use your two fingers. And so I'm doing these compressions, screaming for my wife. And I forget that with a baby, you're not supposed to just put the breaths in on the nose and the mouth. I only did it with the mouth. And so the air was just going out her nose. And then I just remembered in time. And I pushed so much air into her that she threw up whatever was in there, that formula. And I just remember how the police came in, and all I can remember was seeing their shoes. They came maybe 2-3 minutes after I had called 911, and I had saved my daughter's life with CPR, but I almost didn't, and I almost made a mistake that I would have never forgiven myself for. So that's the kind of thing you want to write for that one. It's really hard to do. It's really hard to go there. And to go to a situation where you might have been not out of control, but you really didn't know. You were really tested. And that task was really important. And your action had to be right. And the result, obviously, is was successful in this case, but it made look like a single sentence, and it says intervention, change, or contribution, and then you do a situation, but where you have to go to write this essay, to write this one, is if you do it right, if you have the courage to go there, then this is what somebody holds up and says, we absolutely have to interview this person. And I bring, one of the number one residency sites in the country as the example, because what they're doing is asking you, hey, look, are you going to be honest with us? Are you going to be safe? Or are you going to let go? And are you going to just really, really tell us what you're about? Okay. Number 2, thank goodness. Holy moly. All right. Number 2 is, and that's the STAR technique: situation, task, action, result. I think I lost it a little bit here, but situation, task, action, result. These are called behavioral questions. How did you behave under an emergency situation? And those are the types of things that, you're asked there. But the second one, and why I picked UNC to do this is actually a 2. So you can set the numbering value yourself, and I'll just put it at 2. You describe an area of pharmacy practice with the most need for growth and how the profession can best achieve that growth. So there's the really great example of this. And it wasn't this APHA president, I don't think. It was the past APHA president. He was from Minnesota. And he made the argument that a PharmD should be in every MD's office. Okay, that is one area of pharmacy practice. It has the need for the most growth, and how the profession can achieve that growth. And what he really did was he created a visual. And I remember it today. Like I still remember that speech, and I don't necessarily remember every word of the speech, but I remember the domino thing that he talked about, where if you have a domino can knock over a domino that is, I think it was like 150% of the size of the first domino, and then he talks about exponential growth and how that happens. So best achieve that growth. Well, best achieve exponential growth is even better. And what he did was he just such a great job of thesis, evidence, creating this absolute visual of that. And I just thought it was amazing. So this is supposed to show research competence as if you're writing a peer-reviewed journal paper and you're continuing the conversation. So find a place where people have already talked about this and then mention the article, mention your opinions, and then what your opinions are in achieving it. Now, you may remember this from grade school, and I know this from grade school because we're using it right now. I teach 4th grade to 3 children right now. And you need to use what's called the RACE acronym. So you're going to restate the question as a declarative sentence. So one area of pharmacy practice that has the most need for growth. And yeah, that can be kind of boring, but you're at least answering the question. Then answer all parts of the question. And what I'm just basically saying here is there are actually 2 questions. What some people will do is just go on and on and on for the need for most growth, and then just say, okay, well, the hard part of the PharmDs and the MDs offices was, how do you do that? You saw what happened when PharmDs got provider status. All of a sudden, MDs are opposing that. Okay, so you have really 2 questions. Answer the first question, the most need for growth, and then show your evidence and cite the text. You're going to want to cite literature for that. And then explain your citation, both for and against it. And I don't want to call it a trick, but something that I did when I did the GRE, and I scored, gosh, I wish I had taken the GRE, back when I had the time to go to a PhD program, but I think I scored in the top 1,000 out of the million people that took it in that time frame, because my English and math scores were really high. And one of the things I did, though, for the essay was I made sure to acknowledge the other side. So I would definitely say I can understand how physicians would be threatened by a pharmacist in the office. And that shows a significant degree of maturity in your answer. Okay. So you want to make sure to go with the opposing view as well, and then show why yours is better, which is kind of what you end with. So you do like 1 against and 3 for, or 1 against and 2 for, something like that. But you want to use that race description, restating the question, answering all parts of the question, citing the evidence, explaining your citation. Okay, so let's look at another couple. This is University Medical Center, New Orleans, and it's not hidden, but it's on their webpage, and they make clear your application will not be reviewed if you don't answer this question. And that's kind of like the M&M's thing with the rock stars. You know how they used to say, like, we need a bowl of M&M's with all of the brown M&M's pulled out. And you're like, wow, that's really, rude. Why would you do something like that? You know what they're really testing? And one of the rock stars talked about this and how it happened. He said, look, we are going to be up on stage with fire and electricity, and we've got rigging above us and lights that can fall on our heads. If they don't read that line about the M&Ms, they probably didn't actually read the whole contract. And this is the exact same thing, and I love that they do this. If you're applying here and you're just sending out, letters to anybody and everybody hoping that you'll get a match, you might not see that they have 2 special requirements, this one, and that you have to have 7 of the parts of the recommendation that have to be answered, or they won't accept your application. I just thought that was really important that they bring your focus back to, 1, is this a person that pays attention to detail? And 2, we really want to be able to evaluate you. So go back to your recommenders and ask them to make sure to fill in all of that information. It's been a difficult thing for them to get. So this is actually the star question in disguise, or in, words. But the situation is reflect on a challenging situation. The task is, where did you question your values or assumptions or utilize your knowledge and reasoning? Then the action is, how did you deal with the situation? And the result is, what did you learn from the experience? Okay. So Kentucky does something similar, except they do double star. So the first question is a specific situation, and that's kind of a giveaway. But during the past year, would you enhance the provision of patient-centered care? And then what was the task? What was the action? What was the result? Okay. And then the same thing here, though. It's not about patient care, but how do you deal with ethical dilemmas? And what you're really looking for here is something like, I saw someone stealing, but it would impact me if I told on them. So let's say you had a fellow technician that stole medicine from the pharmacy, and you told on them. Okay. Why did you tell on them? Is the right thing to do and all of that stuff. But how did you approach that? Because that person might have been your friend, and that person might have been someone you were close to. And, does your value overpower that, friendship or relationship? And you probably were doing it in their best interest, especially if it was something like opioids or something like that. And let's not, focus on technicians. Pharmacists could do the same thing and all of that. But what you want to do is make sure that you are addressing the ethical part of it, that you are showing rationale, both subjective and objective. Because what they're really testing is, look, not everything's black and white. What do you do in the gray areas? How do you handle the gray areas? And that's what this guy is about. Okay. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the format. So when you're writing a letter of intent and you're asked to do double spaces, and some of them are explicit about this, most are not. One way to do it is to, you have your paragraphs, and this lorem ipsum, the reason why it's all red is because it's all in Latin, and it's just saying that these are spelled wrong, but it's Latin. So, but the double spaced LOI, what it's basically saying is I want you to double space the paragraph so I can make a note between each paragraph. They're not here to correct your English, and they're not going to do all the diacritical marks on that stuff. But they do want to make notes. Okay, let's see. So hospital work experience. Looks like they're interested in PGY2 here, and in cancer or oncology. All right. Okay, so here's the evidence. Yep, they did do an oncology APPE, and they did a PEDS APPE. Oh wow, PEDS oncology. Okay, wow, that's really specific. Okay, look. All right, let's look at their research. Yeah, so they did present at ASHP. All right. Oh, they presented ASHP twice. Okay, all right. And then they're making their notes here, and that's what that room is for. However, when you're doing an essay, it's very different, because what you're looking at is, does it look like an essay? Does it feel like an essay? So where you saw block formatting, and you don't have to do block, usually you'll indent the first and block the other, but that's kind of irrelevant with the LOI. What is important on the essay is that it's really easy to read. If I talk about like my positioning as I'm reading something, if I'm looking at an LOI, I'm kind of in here like looking at the details and really trying to, make my notes and understand what the person's really got in terms of, an inventory of those things that somebody that's a resident needs. Here in the double space format, I would look and I'd say, okay, well, let's see if this looks like a story and reads like a story. Okay. So again, when I'm doing that story, I'm going to have, X number of paragraphs. And what I can do is I can take that kind of star, which the situation was, I have this NICU baby and she's on the floor with me. And here we are. There's 3 cribs in the room. There's 2 other girls that are there that are crying during the scene and all of that stuff. The task was to save her life. But the task was to bring her back as she started turning purple. And, what was it that I needed to do? And I called for help, 911 and all that, but I still had something that I needed to do because those other places that I was going to were not available immediately. So the task was to immediately get her breathing again. Okay. So what was my action? And I go through the steps where, look, I tried to do the compressions, and I did the compressions, and I tried to do the breathing through the mouth, and I messed it up. And then I got the nose and mouth right, and then I just pushed so hard with that air to try to get a rebound effect so that she would vomit it up. And of course I tried finger and all that stuff. And that was the action. And then what was the resolution? And instead of saying cops came, family came, she went to the hospital, had surgery the next morning, I would maybe make some of those details. Like I only saw the policeman's shoes. I remember seeing her on a stretcher, and here she is, 7 pounds or 8 pounds on this adult stretcher. Or maybe I talk about the surgery, and I do remember writing a nonfiction thing on this. I'd have to find it. It got published in the Journal of Narrative Medicine or something like that back in my creative writing days. And what I really just remembered was, here comes the surgeon, and I just remember him giving us so much confidence because he said something to the effect that this will be all right. Okay? This will be taken care of. And the reason why I had such a kind of conflict in my head is this was a big guy. He had huge hands. And I'm like, this guy with huge hands is going to fix my daughter's 8 pound, pyloric valve. And sure enough, he did. And I remember what he said. He said, there will be no problems. And he said it twice. And he wasn't British, but he had the British English from another country. And it was something like, there will be no problem. There will be no problem. And I just remember it so distinctly that there would be no problem. And after that entire episode, you get a real good idea of, who I am as a parent, from that, and, I got lucky. I did. But, if you really want it, if you really want to get to this level where you're at a UNC or a Kentucky or New Orleans or whatever it is, where there's going to be this super competitive group, this is your real chance to do it. Because these residents that are reading it, the RPDs that are reading it, they're just like, dagger, another 400, 500 applications, whatever it is. But if you give them a story and you truly put your heart in it, I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I'm just saying you're in a lot better shape. And the other thing is I think it teaches you something about yourself. I think we take so few chances to kind of acknowledge when we got something right. As a parent, I get so many things wrong. My kids tell me all the time. But every once in a while, I get something right, And that was just it was just a really, really, it's a really, really cool thing. So anyway, if you need help with your letters, I'm here to help you. I don't write your letters for you, but if these essays are a real burden and you've kind of gotten the STAR thing going and you've got your story, I want to be there to help you. And it's just like the other thing. If you've already worked with me though on letters of intent, it's $95 to work with me on 2 letters, and then you get the course with that. But then if you need help with 2 other letters, it's $75 for each additional 2 to help you with it. And it's just so I can explain to my wife why I am down here in the basement, working on this late at night, early in the morning, whenever. But anyway, so hope this helps you guys with the essays. Sorry, I kind of completely lost it there. But, if there's an expression, I think it was Frost or something like that, it said something like, if there's no surprise for the writer, there's no surprise for the reader. So there should be something that's like, whoa, that was pretty neat. And those surprises are what put it in that top 10% that gets you, the residency interview and get you moving forward. All right. Well, best of luck to you. Easiest way to get a hold of me, TonyThePharmacist @gmail.com. That's TONY. Or you can go to residency.teachable.com /P/extreme LOI.